Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Mathyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. So this invocation is acknowledging the tradition. So before we begin the teaching, we obviously have to acknowledge the rishis who have taken lifetimes, generation after generation, by the collection of all of their knowledge, the Vedas, which we are using to realize and to grow. So we are acknowledging this entire tradition, starting from Sadashiva, from Shiva, that means Ishvara. That means the one from whom all knowledge comes. And then Shankaracharya, this means the one who has revived this Advaitic tradition and clarified through many commentaries so that we may understand the depth and layers upon layers of what the Vedas is expounding. And then Madhyamam, down to the middle, that means wherever that middle happens to be relative to now. And then this tradition continues to my teacher, that means the teacher who has taught whoever happens to be teaching now. On the basis of that, we acknowledge all of these characters involved all the way to Ishvara. And by that, we have this tradition, Advaita Vedanta. Also, we've recently had our Shivaratri. What's the story behind this sacred festival? And it is said, on the common general knowledge, that this is the day when Shiva married Shakti, and this Shakti is goddess Durga. Now, it seems like a little bit strange. What is this Shiva marrying Durga? Okay, so who is Shiva? Who is Durga? Who's marrying who? You know, is this happening within time itself? What's going on here? Well, first of all, as we said before in our lessons, that Shiva is one of the aspects of the total intelligence, which we call Ishvara. So this means from the aspect of removing the old moment to give way for the new, we call that one intelligence. Instead of calling it the destroyer or the remover, we just give it a nice little Devata name called Shiva. And then it says, Shiva married Durga. Okay, so what is Durga? Durga represents the infinite power, and that is Maya. But it also said that is the day when Shiva married Durga. So obviously now, a little bit of a receptive mind is going to start to question this. What do you mean when it married? Did this begin in time? Did this all happen within time? Then who created time, right? So if you look at these statements literally, then you're going to start getting skeptical about them and start to kind of dismiss them. And this is all just mumbo jumbo. So these are all symbolisms that we use for the benefit of communicating this to ordinary human beings. So we say Shiva married Durga. And to honor Shivaratri, Maha Mrityunjaya Mantra. So Mrityu who means death, and Jaya means to overcome. That's why it's called Maha Mrityunjaya Mantra. And I'll explain what it means. Om Trayambakai Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamritaat. So let's explain this mantra, because some of us have heard it many times before. So first of all, Trayambakam Yajamahe. So you, who is this you? You, Shiva, the one that, the three-eyed one, the Trayambakam. You, Shiva, the three-eyed one. What does this three-eyed one mean? The one with knowledge, the one who has the eye of knowledge. That means the all-seeing one. To you, we propitiate. What does propitiate mean? It means to gain or to regain the goodwill of. This means we're calling forth upon you so that we may benefit. And how so? And then the next word is Sugandhim. So this means you, Shiva, the destroyer, who people are generally afraid of and try to put under the carpet, are actually the one who brings about fragrance in life. Now, what is this fragrance in life? And what is this, how can the destroyer bring fragrance? Well, if you think about it, suppose that every moment was just static and you could not open up to a new fresh moment. Could you ever grow? Absolutely not. That means you will never have the opportunity to forgive, to say something, to even to say, I'm sorry, because now that whole mistake would be like permanently etched in the universe, and everyone will know about your mistakes. So there will be no chance to ever grow. So to you, you're the one who brings this opportunity for growth. That means opportunity whereby we can learn something. And then it's pushti vardhanam. So if I make use of these opportunities, I, the seeker, the aspirant, if I make use of these opportunities, that is the fresh moment, now, then it brings for you nourishment. Because without having this opportunity brought forth, then how are you going to learn? Because you would be stuck with the old learning, with the old perspective. Now, what do I, the limited individual, want from you, Shiva? And that is Urvarukam iva bandhanat. So what does Urvarukam mean? Like a big, heavy pumpkin, when it's ripe, then you can pluck it off effortlessly. Just like that, when this huge, big, heavy pumpkin, it's heavy to pick up, just like that, when the mind is ripe, then it can be effortlessly released, or one can use it to release oneself effortlessly from bandhanat, from bondage. So if you think about a pumpkin, right? It's still growing, and if you pluck it at the wrong time, there's no benefit. You cannot reap the rewards. So this means you have to wait until it's ripe. Only then you can reap the proper rewards. Only then it tastes proper. Only then it actually has some nutritional benefits. In that same way, if the mind tries to speed up this process of removing ignorance to release oneself from bondage, then it is as good as plucking this big, heavy mind, this big, heavy pumpkin when it's not ripe, therefore not gaining any rewards from that. And the question is, how does this mind now become ripe? So that's the next what we want to know. We do so by gaining mastery over the little bondages that are holding us down, because this verse is talking about this big bondage, beginningless birth that is causing one to be reborn. So how do we now get released from this big bondage? By conquering our little bondages that are holding us down. For example, take emotional bondage. What kind of emotional bondages? Emotional bondages are those things that are causing disharmony, discords in relationship to our own thoughts, our close associates, our close family members, but also in respect to whatever is happening on in the world right now. But if you actually change this with the right attitude, then every emotional disbalance that comes out in any moment is actually a window into your unconscious mind. And what is this unconscious mind? It is the very obstruction that is holding one from moving on to the next step. So it's actually a great privilege to look inside your mind, but it's very hard. Well, it's actually not hard at all, because you just monitor your own emotional responses in relation to those who are right around you, close, on a day-to-day basis. And you say, okay, so this is what is going on inside my unconscious mind. If I can resolve this, only then I can actually move on and progress onto the next step. I spoke about this last week, how there's no skipping. There's also relative or situational bondages. So if you look at this from a proper attitude, every challenge that comes, if you look at it in a proper perspective, can be a learning opportunity. If only, as I said last week, pause to see what's going on, reflect to actually get the necessary knowledge, the necessary data. On the basis of that reflection, you can then take an appropriate response, appropriate action. Pause, reflect, act. There's also bondage from old age. Some of us look at old age as something that is not to be looked forward to. But if you look at it from a proper perspective, old age is actually the best thing you can be privileged to. Because old age gives you wisdom. Through the course of time, you naturally start to forget those strong likes and dislikes that keep the person holding them down. And old age is actually something to be celebrated, because it's an effect of all of your learning that is taking place. If you just look at yourself as a youngster, right, in 20s, hormones were going everywhere. And that itself becomes an obstruction to actually sitting down and actually having some proper perspective about life. because hormones are going all over there and you're trying to be here. So there's this mix up and you're just trying to like hold it together, but it's very hard. So this means age itself helps a lot with this process of immaturity by itself just falling away through time. So this means we have to ask ourselves, are we able to manage these little bondages so that you're not consumed by them over time, but also so that others are not victimized by them? These two we have to address. Am I being consumed by my own little bondages? Because if yes, they need to be resolved. And second is, am I victimizing others because of my own bondages that are holding me down? Sometimes we project, and that's the only way that we think we can release our own bondages is by putting it onto the world, kind of like wallpapering the world with the stuff that we have unresolved in our minds. Now the question is, the pumpkin represents a big burden, so does the mind. Why is it such a effortless process to be released? Because that's what the verse says. When the mind is ready, when it's something so huge that we've been carrying all our life, even past lives, why is it so effortlessly released when the mind is ripe? The answer is because there's two kinds of self-growth. The first one is forced. This is having impatience. This means I want to get there. That means from the standpoint of the present, we say, I want to get there. And there's this kind of like a little bit agitation, like that I'm not there, but I want to get there. And so everything that happens to be in the way becomes an obstruction. And then we project our own bondage onto what is obstructing us. Whereas, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to say, hey, I'm supposed to be patient. I'm supposed to be kind. I'm supposed to be gentle towards this because I do not control the grand order. There are too many variables that are going on at any moment that are suppressing the individual from removing the bondage right now. So this means there has to be a level of patience. You also have to understand that sometimes you will yield to old ways, no doubt. But the other times you will also bring in the teaching. So for this also we have to be patient, because sometimes we say, this is not working. I'm found myself in a particular event and I'm not applying this knowledge. Well, that's not just for you. We all go through this. So this means sometimes you will yield to the old ways and sometimes you will also bring in the teaching. This also we have to understand and be kind and patient towards ourselves, because at least you're trying. It's not like you're just sitting down and going, oh, my life is a waste. I'm not moving anywhere and watching TV. You're not doing that. So this means you need to acknowledge yourself every once in a while that at least you're taking the time every week or wherever it is to help yourself. So forced is what? Impatient, trying to live like a wise person, trying to pretend, putting issues under the carpet, trying to feel good. And real, acknowledge and reflect on everything that comes up. Because as I said earlier, that is the window into the unconscious mind, preventing one from moving to the next step. Okay, and then finally it says, Mrityoho mukshiya ma amritat. So what this is saying is, the more real and honest you are about your self-growth, I just explained what real is compared to forced. The more real and honest you are, when I say honest, I mean whatever comes up, you address it. You don't put it under the carpet, but you say, this is what's going on in this mind. Therefore, it is my cue to look at it. Then the more the person is capable of holding this final reality. So it means the more impatient the person is, the more dishonest they are towards themselves. That actually means putting things under the carpet as though I don't have any problems. Then this vision comes and goes. And this itself frustrates the person. And this takes their self-esteem down the drain. And they say, see, this is I'm no good and it's not working for me. This is not my time. So this means there has to be a level of realness, authenticity, honesty towards oneself, and patience. So this means once the mind is ripe, it can be effortlessly released. So what this actually means is the buddhi, once it has total conviction that I am not an individual going through this life, but rather I am inherently free of this life, then amritam, that means the person gains immortality. This mantra is commonly used as for those people who are ill or dying. This is one aspect of the mantra. There is a much greater depth to these mantras. And I've explained the Vedic view of this mantra, because sometimes, yes, it can be used when the person's dying, when someone's sick. Okay, any questions about this?
Yeah, Andre, so when the pumpkin is ripe and it falls off, is that the same as attaining moksha, is it?
Yes, so when it's ripe, then it effortlessly just releases by itself. In that same way, when this heavy, clouded mind with false notions is ripe, ripeness just means when it's worked enough on itself, then through the right knowledge, Jnana Yoga, it's able to release itself from the notion that I am this very mind. It just falls away effortlessly. That means it becomes much easier to realize one's true nature and to have that stick instead of just kind of going in and out.
When we talk about Shiva marrying Durga, what does that signify?
Sure. Okay, good. I'm glad you brought that up. So again, Shiva represents Brahman and Durga represents Maya. So Brahman is marrying Maya. Now, one thing about this is say, well, wait a minute, they're both beginningless. How can they marry? As I said earlier on, these are symbolisms which can use how to relate to ordinary human beings. So it's kind of like a romantic notion, right? Brahman marrying Maya, but they're actually one. They're not separate. Okay, verse 19. Tulyaninda stutir mauni santushto yena kenachit aniketa stiram mattihi bhaktiman me priyo naraha.
The one who is equal to censure and praise, disciplined in speech, satisfied by whatever he gets, who has no place to call his own, whose knowledge is firm, and who has devotion is beloved to me. Praise and censure of a wise man by someone who is ignorant are meaningless. Whatever praise one may give, the wise man knows he is more than that because he is not different from Parameshwara. Since he has no sense of want, nothing will flatter him. And if people criticize, well, they have every freedom to do so.
Tulya ninda stutihi. So we're talking still about a wise person. Remember, these are attributes. So this means a wise person retains his or her discrimination, retains his or her buddhi, retains his or her power to think, objectivity, whether complimented or criticized. So let's talk about if complimented, what happens? Let's just bring this down to earth. Suppose you are adoring whatever you happen to be doing. That means your swadharma is the meaning of your life. That means you're doing your purpose, your talents and skills are coming out, and you're also benefiting financially. You're also influencing and you're helping people through your talents and skills. Now, suppose someone compliments you. Sure, it's enjoyable, right? You say, okay, thank you. But is that going to have much impact considering you absolutely love what you do? I mean, yes or no, right? But generally just going to continue whatever you're doing because you're not doing it for the sake of proving to your parents how good you are or to your neighbor or, to kind of say to the world, hey, look, I'm somebody, look at me. You're just doing it because you're immersed. Like, for example, Rani, she loves to paint. It's not like she's doing it, to show the world. But just through her painting alone, she talks about it and the listener enjoys listening to it. And, the painting behind me, that's hers. So this means just by you doing what you're good at, that means discovering your skill, your talent, you happen to be influencing within your scope of your influence. So this means, yes, a little compliment can help. How does it help? If you apply the compliment in a sense of showing them that in one particular area, their strengths shine, that actually can help the other person. Because sometimes what happens is we start off really good and then we start to take our own abilities for granted. Now, if nobody kind of compliments us or brings that out, then we sort of just kind of put it aside and then we say, well, nobody is paying attention, or you don't even pay it. It's not even about others, put others aside. So this means a compliment every once in a while that is specific about something can actually help the person. So for example, Rani's painting, if I say, I really like how the way you curve the lines or how you mix the shade. Now, suppose Rani was really good at that at some point, and through the course of time, she, forgets that skill and then she goes into something, and I bring out the curves and she goes, oh, wow, thanks. And then she goes back and she starts to put those curves in again. So this means you can actually help the person by being specific in your compliments instead of just flattering, oh, you're so good. It's like, okay, what do I do with that? I'm so good. What do I do with that? So what specifically is making a person shine? Mention that if you can, gladly. And it's going to be appreciated, no doubt, whether they're a wise person or not, because there's still a human being aspect involved. Now, what happens if you're criticized? If a person's criticized, then there's no need to, you can look at it in a positive attitude. How? Everyone has blind spots. So if a person's criticized, then what you can do is you can look at that as feedback into your own knowledge or behavior, because people rarely criticize unless they see something which you don't. Yes, sure, maybe once in a while, sometimes someone's angry or jealous, but that is highly, highly rare, actually, especially, someone who's into Vedanta, you probably not hang around that group of people anyway. So this means look at every criticism as something that you can look within yourself. Maybe the timing was off. Maybe you said it in a wrong manner. So this means it's not about now saying, oh, you don't know, and you don't know what kind of trainings I've got. I've got the Shastra behind me. Every person can see something that you cannot see yourself, no matter how smart you are. So this is why we all need a mirror. There's no way you can be so sensitive to pick it up yourself. So this means criticism itself is an absolute blessing to maximizing or accelerating your self-growth. In fact, I often say to, when I go to a class, when I'm a student, when I'm playing the student role, I say, put the compliments aside. Tell me what you see in me. The blind spots. Tell me the weaknesses that you see in me, because that's how the growth happens. If you just sort of say, oh, you're so good at this or that, I'm like, I've heard that before 100 times. So tell me where those parts that I may be neglecting, both complimented or criticized. What is the wise person's attitude in respect to them? They're still a student of life. Humility. You don't know everything. So this means you're ongoingly making fine adjustments, whoever you happen to be around. Someone gives you some at home, someone at work, someone on the road. All of these are opportunities for growth. Next is Mauni. The wise person has refined speech. So let's go through a crash course how to communicate per the Vedas. We can apply this at our work, at home, with ourselves, anywhere. First is Satyam-Priyam-Hitam. That means truthful speak. Okay, so how do you apply this? You use Dharma to guide your word. So every word selection is in the name of Dharma. So this means the person's speaking from the place whereby you have reflected upon what you're about to say. You have taken the time yourself to think about what you are about to say. So you speak from that depth of having assimilated and having reflected upon that in yourself. The second is it doesn't contradict the scriptures. How do you know? Well, this is why the scriptural study is important. So first, let Dharma be your guide how to use your words. And second, ensure that the words or the sentences do not contradict the scriptures, because the scriptures, the Vedas, are considered the truth. The second is Priyam-Hitam. Priyam-Hitam is having manners. Now, manners is a general topic, so we have to bring it down. Manners, first of all, means deliver it at the right time. Suppose that someone is not feeling, someone made a trip up or they did something that is inappropriate, and they themselves realize that. They're like, oh no, I made a mistake. And then you don't even give them time to process that by themselves. You just go over there and say, you were so rude. I mean, they're still going through that time themselves, right? So this means now you've only interrupted their own process. So manners means looking, is this the right time? Are they in the right frame of mind to be receptive to what I'm about to receive, to what I'm about to deliver? So this means it's your job to be acute. This also involves not being too direct in your language. Sometimes, even though we speak the truth, if it comes too direct, it can actually hurt the person. Can someone give an example of this, of being too direct, even though you're completely truthful and honest?
Yeah, I had a situation at work many years ago when a woman had a personal odor problem, and I was a manager and needed to address it. And I told her she smelled, and she burst into tears. I really regret that. I don't know how it is. Yeah.
Okay, so this is actually common. We're at work, we just say, no, this is how it should be. And you're actually totally being, because, you're pressure and there's a time aspect, you need to get the job done, right? But then we still forget there's a human being they were speaking to. I mean, they could have had a fight last night, or the work, just coming to work, right? They could have had some trip up in terms of traffic condition, and that could have affected their state. So this means we can scar them by not applying manners or not being sensitive enough to consider them and look at them as a human being. Okay, the next one is hitam padam. Before speaking, ask, what good will my talk have in the overall well-being? Why am I going to have this conversation? What is my intention? So this means if we don't set up these frame of questions, then what happens is our conversations can go left or right, and we ourselves get lost into it. So we ask, what is my intention? What am I willing to accomplish here? Like what is the end? Now, don't get me wrong, you don't have to think about this everything. It's not like let's go to a picnic and you're like, what's our intention here before we speak? It's not like that. But there is also a place whereby we set up a proper frame, especially in a professional setup. What good is what I'm about to say? What is it going to have in this company or in this institution or in this setup? For example, it could be to throw light onto the subject matter. It could be to provide an alternative perspective so that we all may consider it. What happens sometimes is our own, as I said earlier, our own bondages hold us back. So we have something of value to deliver, but we just don't want to speak up. So what happens is you actually suppress the entire environment from enjoying your own view. Because think about it this way, no one here has all knowledge. Now, suppose someone asks, what do you think? And then it's like, I was like, oh yeah, I've got some good ideas, but I don't want to speak up because I may be criticized. Then you're actually doing a disfavor to everyone, including the host who has actually asked this question, because he or she also needs ideas in order to back and forth. Otherwise, it's just the person speaking from their own, limited knowledge. So this means everyone has a duty to contribute because you're helping everyone, including the host. There's also hitam padam, if you set up this proper frame, prevents us from forming opinions that actually have little value. And also, since you're setting up a frame, you're giving the other a chance to speak. Because the fact is, as I said, you may be missing some aspect of the matter. So if I ask, what is my intention here? If it's the well-being of both, then even if there's a disagreement, you're willing to listen to what they have to say. Suppose they're coming from a different school, different angle, and it is a totally different color from your own. And you say, okay, since I've already asked the question, what is my intention here? Okay, so let's hear your side of the story because I may be having some blind spots myself. So this is another question that can help us to learn from the other. Otherwise, if we don't, okay, now what is the violation of hitam padam? What happens if we don't set up a proper frame? One of them is we're unwilling to listen because we're so caught up in our own narrative, then whatever provides someone some alternatives, we just instantly shut it off. Unwilling to engage or partially engage. And this is called passive aggressive. This means I'm kind of listening to you, but I'm just waiting for you to finish so I can have my say. All of these are versions of himsa because they create tension between the two people, and tension is felt. It cannot be escaped. The person can pretend like they're smiling and all that, but tension is always felt in a conversation. And I know you're going to agree with this. So this means if I'm not setting up a frame, I may get caught up in a conversation, deny their own view. That is himsa. And himsa is also going to come back onto the person in terms of not feeling sharp and willing to communicate their own ideas, because now they're thinking about, oh, I've rejected them, I'm being rejected, so nothing productive can happen. The other one is, why should I explain? I've already done this many times before. They're probably going to say the same thing. Why should I? So this means we shut them off. So instead of doing that, what we can do is we ourselves can change our approach. Instead of saying the same old thing and expecting the same result, then you yourself ask, how can I reframe this conversation so that I may witness a different result? So this means it's up to you to change your approach, because you know if you respond the same, you know what's going to happen because you have a history track record. They're probably not going to listen. So you still have the chance to change your approach or change your conversation. And finally, Ritam Vadam. This is how to communicate. What is Ritam Vadam? Make sure everything you say is factual. That means you're speaking from facts. This means the person is not involving their own subjectivity, their own spins, their own, oh, here's what I think. This often happens in social gatherings, is that we're sort of all caught up in the emotion of meeting up. And then no one is really thinking, okay, let me just pause and speak objectively basis on what I know, instead of just fitting in. So Ritam Vadam is removing that subjectivity, that notion of, let me just say whatever, but rather being factual about the matter. So if there's a disagreement, you still remain factual. What is that? What does factual mean? Objective. This means you don't take it personally, but rather ask, what is the heart of this matter? Let's stick there instead of taking it as a direct attack. Something that we can do is we can write these 4 approaches, and you can put them on a wall or even on your phone wallpaper, and just look at the Hitam Vadam, Satyam Vadam, Ritam Vadam, right? So all of these can be at least for one day, and I promise you the mind is going to capture it. If it captures even one, you've done a good job. If we just write this down and close the notepad and you go, okay, let's wait for the next session, I promise you the mind's going to forget, because there's a weakness of the mind, and that is the memory doesn't hold things unless it engages in the real world. Okay, next is Santushtaha Yena Kenachit. The wise Purusha, he or she enjoys a mind that is easily pleased by this moment. Let's give you some contrast. Let's give a contrast to one's mind who is not easily pleased. This means the person's particular about how things should be or how things shouldn't be. In other words, the person ends up manipulating the environment in order to suit their own shouldisms. If things are not like this, here's how it should be. If things are not like that, then here's how things should be. This much food, one more sugar, not enough honey, more lemon. So in other words, the person's sweating the small stuff, being particular about everything. Now, what is a jnani, a jivan muktaha? The one who enjoys a content disposition. Whatever is in front of me, that is what is in front of me. Make use of it, gladly. Instead of going, not enough, I want more, less of. This is a pain, not only to those who are around you, but also to your own mind, because it actually represents an agitated mind that is not happy with the environment. It also says the person's not happy with themselves because they're not apart from the environment. So what we can do, we can use this as a sadhana. If I'm not happy about what's in front of me, then you can say, I'm intentionally going to accept what's in front of me right now. If a chair is too pricky, then sit on the chair. See how that feels. Actually, for some years, I applied this just spontaneously in my life. Whenever I went to a yoga retreat, we always get these soft cushions. You'll know this. I never took any cushions, ever. I always intentionally sat on the hard floor, barefoot, because I just learned to appreciate the hardness. Because if you just keep on accepting comforts all year long, then the moment some hardship comes, then the person is going to make a big deal out of it. So this means we can use small stuff around us to train ourselves to accept the environment as it is and just be happy with it. Another example, I used to, for example, resist swearing. So people, whenever people swear or use rude words, I was kind of like, let me back quiet. I don't want to speak to them. So what I said, okay, I cannot do this because first of all, I'm taking it personally. But second of all is they're conditioned to speak like this. So I cannot now judge them on the basis of their conditions, right? No one says, it's not like they were born and says, I'm going to swear all my life. They just happen to be in an environment like that, whereby the swear words, one person says one swear word and just kind of people pick these things up. So I took the time to understand this. It's not their fault. They're just being who they are. It's not like they're trying to, injure the environment. And on the basis of this reflection alone, my resistance to those who are swearing has gone away. So this means there's no, if someone swears, okay, I've got no problems. I can still talk to you. So this means we look at those things that we resist, that we're not happy with, and then we take the time to pause, reflect, and then to take action instead of putting it under the carpet. This is the non-real spirituality. Aniketaha. Aniketaha means the wise person has no dwelling place. Now, this indicates clearly that these qualities that we're talking about are of a sannyasi back in the Bhagavad Gita times, however long ago that was. No dwelling, because back then, you're a sannyasi, a ochre robe, you can just live anywhere. So we need to convert this to modern times, because we cannot just say now, you shouldn't care wherever you live. Today, it's different. So this means we have to adapt to the modern times. So what does it mean? What does aniketaha, no dwelling place, mean in the modern times? It means the person feels home wherever they happen to be. I'm not saying like, you just go to someone else's house and you feel more comfortable than them, because that's going to make them uncomfortable, right? So there will be an aspect of, okay, I'm a little bit shy and all that, right? But the speed at which you get comfortable is much faster. Before it was like, 5 hours to get comfortable. Now it's only maybe 5 minutes, right? And shy 5 minutes. Oh, I don't know what's going on here. Where's the toilet, etc. And then within 5 minutes, you're kind of like, you're like a flower and you blossom, and then your back is normal. So this means the wise person feels comfortable wherever they happen to go, whether at their own house or whether it's someone else's house. Why? Because you're comfortable with yourself. Then we have sthira mattihi, the knowledge being I am the final reality. That knowledge is so firm, so thorough and complete that it cannot be improved upon, nor compromised through other competing schools. So you can go to a different school and I can tell you there's aliens and all of this stuff is mumbo jumbo. This Vedas is being contaminated by some beings out there. They're trying to suppress this knowledge. They can tell you all of that. It doesn't affect your knowledge. It doesn't affect your firmness in the Vedas. It doesn't affect your firmness in yourself. That's how firm it is. Because you understand that person may be talking from some irrational ideas, but you have taken your time to look into these truths that we are speaking of, not just blindly accepted them. On the basis of that, you're not pulled away, nor are you compromised by alternative persuasive schools of thought, of philosophy. So this is what a Jivan Muktaha enjoys. The question is, what happens after this knowledge takes place? That means after it becomes firm. And I'm not saying it's a one-off. It happens through the course of life. We often think it's supposed to happen like, wake up at 3:59 during the day, suddenly everything's clear. But 3:58, right? Nothing's making sense. My life is just a total whole, and then 3:58 and then 59 seconds, and then 3:59, boom, everything's fine now. It doesn't happen like that. So this is a false notion, because everything takes time the mind takes time to assimilate, to remove ignorance. So what happens after this knowledge takes strong hold upon the buddhi? The prarabdha karma of that individual still continues. So this means nothing changes. You still have the same old circumstances going on in life, same old challenges. Only thing that changes is the attitude. And what is that attitude? Next line, it says, Bhakti man sa naraha. The wise person is the highest devotee, because everything to him or her is understood as God alone. So to explain this further, there are 4 types of bhaktas, and I'll tell you what it means now in relation to the highest. The first one is arti. Arti bhakta is the one who devotes to God only in times of trouble. So when something goes wrong in life, then suddenly magically God appears in their life, and they sincerely pray for some help. The artharthi, this is the second level. Artharthi acknowledges the presence of Ishvara in every aspect of life, whether they're transacting, whether they're eating, whether they're speaking, whether they want to accomplish small things or big things, they still bring Ishvara into their life. This means Ishvara is part of their life. They're a devotee. The third level is Jijnatsu. having thought about and bringing Ishvara in all aspects of life in the stage of artharati, what is that going to naturally lead to?
Inquiry about God, the truth.
Good.
What is Ishvara?
Okay, good, wonderful. I'll just ask the question because I want to engage you also. I don't want to feel like I'm just talking all the time. Thank you for that. So Jijnatsu is whereby the person wants to now know what is the nature of this entity to whom I am devoting to all the time. So now they change their phrases, their sentences. They say, Ishvara, I, a devotee of you, I pray so that I may understand what is your real nature instead of seeing you as my own notions or through my own assumptions. Who are you? What are you? What is your truth? And what is my relationship to you? So this is an actual byproduct of arati, artharati, jijnatsu. Now, jijnatsu, having asked those questions and gone through the sadhanas, then it converts into jnani. This means the relationship to the world changes. How does it change? It changes from event-dependent satisfaction to gratitude. Usually we're, depending on events to happen or things to happen or COVID to go away or COVID to come back to be in another lockdown or things to be much better. All right, so we're always like going to these shouldisms, how the environment should be, how the environment shouldn't be. So that's called event-dependent satisfaction. It goes into gratitude. Why? Because the wise person says, I am today where I'm at. Having gone through all of those previous stages, I was facilitated by this grand order. So where I'm at today is only because of Ishvara. Who's the one that provided you air all of that time? The environment. The environment is not separate from Ishvara. Right? And all of the teachers that came into your life and all of the people that came into your life, all of that is also the grand order, biological order, physiological order, psychological order. All of those people are infused with those orders as much as you are. All of those orders belong to the grand order called Ishvara. Therefore, the wise person becomes highly grateful in and through all things because they realize, having gone through so much activity and so much seeking, finally the knowledge took place. Finally, the knowledge is so clear only because of Ishvara. The second relationship change is the wise person changes from a complainer to a contributor. Complainer means the environment's not good enough for me, as though I'm so special that the environment should suit just me. So from complainer into contributor. Contributor within your sphere of influence. So this means wherever your skills and talents lie, that is where you become the contributor specifically. In this way, the wise person continues being a devotee, relating to Ishvara through contribution. So what I mean to say is, the more proactive and dynamic you are, the wiser you are. This is counterintuitive to what we've heard in the spiritual world, that the wise person is totally inactive, just witnessing, that Kena Upanishad, right? The two birds. One bird is eating the fruit and the other one's just watching. See, there is a metaphor and there's a certain teaching there. But there's the other side of that, is that the wise person, despite being able to watch, they're also as much involved in the activity. Why would you not be? Because you're part of the grand order. It's not like you're excluded and you're like, I'm above the grand order and I can just witness everything going on. It's not like that. It's like the little puzzle piece of the big picture, right? Going, oh, I'm special. I'm a wise puzzle piece. I'm just watching all these puzzle pieces going through this samsara. It's not like that. That entire big picture, you're included inside that big picture. So the irony is, the more person is in touch with who they are, the more proactive and dynamic they are, without losing themselves in their activity. Yetu dharmyamritamidam yathoktam pariyupasate shraddadhana matparamaha bhakta stetiva me priyaha.
However, those who follow this life, that is in keeping with Dharma, leading to immortality, as was told, who are endowed with strata, and for whom I am the ultimate, those devotees are exceedingly beloved to me.
And you can just continue now reading.
So dharmyam is that which does not move away from dharma. And it is amurta because it is the cause for amtua, immortality.
Yeah.
This life of dharma that consists of conducting oneself in keeping with the description of a wise man that was just told, and meditating upon Akshara Brahma is the means for liberation. The wise man's natural expression, friendliness, maitri, compassion, karun, absence of svesa, and so on, become the values of those who seek this wisdom. Those mumukshus meditating upon Akshara Brahma also pursue those values relatively. They are able to pursue this well and with great enthusiasm because they are shraddhadanaha. They are endowed with shraddha in themselves, the teacher, the shastra, and Ishvara. The grace of all four is required. Through prayer, we gather the grace of Ishvara and one manifestation of that grace. Ishvara Kripa is the very Shraddha. Because of Shraddha in the Shastra, there is Shastra Kripa, whereby what the Shastra says is understood properly. Otherwise, Shastra will be interpreted differently, which is why we have so many schools of thought arising from the same Shastra. Thirdly, you require the teacher's grace, Guru Kripa, and finally your own, Atma Kripa. When they are all there, you will have conducive situations and atmosphere, trust in yourself, and therefore this knowledge.
Okay, good. Thank you.
What it communicates to me is there's things that I can do as an individual, and that is pray.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I often wonder, well, what can I do other than just think these concepts through?
Yeah.
I like to do stuff, and so I have these little rituals, not always, but just in the morning, say some prayers, light a candle. When I drive to work, I pray in my mind, stuff like that.
Yes. Yes, good, Victor. So Swami Dayananda said that prayer is the highest expression of free will because it takes a highly mature and refined mind to pray, not blindly, of course, but to know that because, okay, why does it require a mature mind? Because to pray, you're acknowledging that there is a certain helplessness. Just like Victor beautifully said, see, there is a certain level where you do have a level of control, but beyond that level, there's absolutely nothing you can do. Suppose that your daughter or your son gets hurt, and then you take them to the hospital, and now they're lying in a bed, and you're just watching there helplessly. So now what do? You apply prayer. Now the question is, where does this prayer and how does it help? First of all, I said before that every cause, see, prayer is a cause. Every cause has to have an effect. So what you're doing is you're introducing one more variable into the field through the process of prayer, thus contributing to the total variables in respect to that object which you are praying to. Now, what happens sometimes is we don't necessarily have our prayers answered. And then we say, see, prayer doesn't work. But the fact is prayer the only variable that is influencing that object? Suppose it's a person that is sick in bed. Absolutely not. Because they still have their own biological order. Their own nervous system is still influencing whether they're going to recover or not. So yes, your prayer does have an effect, but it is not the only variable which is contributing to the well-being or to the final outcome of that event or person turning out the way that you want. So this means, yes, pray when the person is helpless. And that requires a lot of maturity and strength because we say, I don't see any prayers. Where's the results? So what does it say about the person? They think that things are supposed to happen right now, but it's not like that because there's a delay. There's an adrishta palam. There's a delayed result which happens afterwards. And it may not be completely answered because sometimes it's time for the person to go. Suppose that a person is now lying in bed and you're praying for them. Oh, let this person please let them not die. I mean, think about it this way. That person, you know, okay, would you want to pray for a person who is now incapable of, suppose their memory is totally gone, you know, like Alzheimer's disease, and they don't remember anything. Now the question is, do you want to pray for them so they survive, or do you want to just let them go? So there's also that component involved. And suppose you say, please let them not go away. Well, that is your thought, but maybe they do want to go. So now who wins? Is your prayer now supposed to kind of force them to stay alive? Absolutely not. So this means there is still a variable on their part which influences the final outcome. So I'm glad that Victor has brought this topic up.
Andre, it sounds to me as though this is saying that faith itself is a form of knowledge. It leads to knowledge. But if a person doesn't have knowledge, how can the faith lead into knowledge?
Yes, because life itself is a teacher also. So through life, you contact some people and they send you to some other person, and that other person tells you a little bit of a different perspective about things, and you take that on board, and that sends you to another country to see some other teacher there, and they give you some more knowledge. So this means on the basis of our life itself becomes a guiding principle. This is why, as I said previously, the wise person is grateful because they realize how many variables took place for them to understand the bigger reality. Dharmya amritam idam. The question is now posed: how to attain the aforementioned qualities of this wise person? And the simple answer is by going through the 5 sadhanas of bhakti. And they're all expounded by the Vedas and the Acharya. And not only that, but you also need a certain level of trust in both the Vedas and also in the Acharya. So this means if you don't have trust in the Vedas, but you have trust in the Acharya, then you're going to start naturally questioning, well, since this knowledge that the teacher is speaking is coming from the Vedas, from Vedanta, and I don't trust that, then you're going to start questioning no different than if you don't trust the teacher. So this means there has to be a certain trust factor involved. Now you're going to say, well, how do you come to that place of trust? As Robert was just asking, you gain knowledge enough so that you can discriminate what is potentially right and what is potentially incorrect. We'll just stick with potentially for now, but it is still enough for your buddhi to discern whether the knowledge is incomplete or whether the knowledge is complete. This is why if you talk to any person in a spiritual field and you ask them, tell me your story, they will all tell you the same story more or less. They will say something like, I was listening for a long time and then through the course of time I felt there was something was missing. So this means, this is the irony. The very listening through the course of time refined their buddhi in order to question what they're listening to. So it's not now about, this is a waste of time. The very thing that was seemingly wasting the person's time was the very source of their growth, enough to mature them to say, this is incomplete, I need to go elsewhere. So this is why, as I said previously, the wise person is grateful. There's no question of dismissing anything as though it's a waste of time, because the fact is that too has a certain role to play in many people's lives. And it's going to then move them on to the final teaching. A little question: why is the Bhagavad Gita called a smriti? Smriti means to recall. Smriti means to call forth in the mind. I'll give you a little tip. The Bhagavad Gita is on the basis of the Vedas. And the Bhagavad Gita is in a category of smriti. So what does this now mean? Does this mean that Bhagavad Gita is like a recalled moment of the event of Kurukshetra? Or the smriti means something else? So when it says Bhagavad Gita is a smriti, not a shastra, but a smriti, it means the entire tale that we're listening to is on a basis of recalling the knowledge from the Vedas and putting it in a form of a tale, a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. I'm saying this because often we say Bhagavad Gita is a smriti, it's a recall from what happened some time ago. No, anything that represents the Vedic knowledge is a smriti. Okay, and finally, mat paramaha bhaktaha te ativa me priyaha. The mumukshu is a seeker of liberation. Mumukshu and jijnatsu, I told you those 4 stages. Arti, artharti, jijnatsu, jnani. Mumukshu and jijnatsu are same. So this means the desire of liberation, through effort and time becomes my most beloved bhakta. That's what the Lord says. My most beloved bhakta. Now, you're going to question, you're going to say, this sounds like a discrimination here. So this means Lord loves the wise person more than the unwise people, right? So what could it be saying now? Through the course of time, think about this carefully, the jnani becomes my most beloved. What do you think is trying to say here?
Closer to the truth. Like
Okay. Okay, super. Anyone else wanted to add to that? A simple example. Suppose that there is a fella who, they're just like unlovable person. You just cannot get close to them. I mean, you want to like tell them something and you don't want to tell them a few instructions how to communicate, apply those four, Ritam Vedam, Hitam Vedam, Satyam Vedam, but they're just like a generally unlovable person. Right? They just get away from me. What do you know? I'm smart. See, they're trying their best, right? They're resisting the knowledge of how to communicate. That means they're not close to how to communicate on the basis of what? Their own obstructions, on the basis of their own notions, how to otherwise be in this world. So this means in the same way, when a person has their own notions, what I am, what is the nature of I am, how is the Lord supposed to love you? Because you're the one who's saying, Lord is like this, Lord is like that, and so how are you supposed to receive love like that? So it's not like the Lord is discriminating, but only to the basis of having removed this layer and upon layer that is denying me from accepting that my awareness is the very same awareness of Ishvara. On the basis of that, he or she is the most loved. So it always goes back to the individual. I said before, Ishvara is an impersonal principle. Use it or deny it. Either way, the person suffers or enjoys according to their own actions. Okay, and this sums up chapter 12. Om Tat Sat iti Shrimad Bhagavadgita tsu Upanishads Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Bhakti Yoga Nama Dvadasho Dhyayaha.
Om Brahm is the only reality. Thus ends the 12th chapter called Bhakti Yoga, having the topic of devotion. In the Bhagavad Gita, which is in the form of a dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, which is the essence of the Upanishads, whose subject matter is both the knowledge of Brahman and Yoga.
And continue.
Both the one who is meditating on Akshara Brahma and one who is pursuing Karma Yoga, combined with meditation on Sagun Brahma, are bhaktas. The word bhakti is used diversely in this chapter, and thus the topic of the chapter is bhakti. There is no separate discipline called Bhakti Yoga. Yoga here, as in all the other chapters, means a topic. Both bhakti characterized by the knowledge of what is real and that characterized by devotion to and meditation upon Parmeshwara are mentioned here. At the end, Lord Krishna says, Te ativa me priyaha. They are for me the most beloved.
Dhanyavad. Okay. Let's do a summary of the entire chapter 12.
So I have a small comment here.
Yes, Pavan.
What I believe is Bhagavad Gita, I mean, that's my personal belief. It's like the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is not to show the truth, but to make the person open-minded enough to understand the truth. So what I believe is this much of content is to make the person's mind open, and inside it there is truth, because the truth is the ultimate truth is single line. Mahabhagyas can be told in 4 lines, right? It's like Shivoham, like Atma is, so essentially the ultimate truth is Atma is Akarta and Abhokta. It's like, it's neither the creator, it's like even saying that God loves you is a contradiction because you are God. So they seemingly there are so many contradictions, but they are trying to make you more and more sattvic and open-minded, and once you have all that negative things gone, you're your mind becomes calm, then you realize the actual truth. Because if I say the actual truth in 4 words, nobody is going to listen. Because that's why I see there is some apparent contradiction, but that contradiction is there for a reason. That's what I believe.
One time at Chinmaya school, I asked my teacher, do I have to go through all the 4 Vedas to get the truth? Because the 4 Vedas are like, that thick, right? There's thousands of pages. And she said, no. And I said, well, why are our scriptures so thick? The reason is because every personality is different. Like, for example, you may into be meditation, some are into ritual, some are into yajnas, some are into knowledge. So this means the Vedas are so geniusly designed. They are there to help us accommodate the various platforms of personalities that we all have through different periods of time. Therefore, the scriptures are very thick. So what the Bhagavad Gita does, it condenses the crux of that without necessarily appealing to different personalities. Because for that, we're going to say, okay, here's the scriptures, like the Puranas, the 18 Puranas, you got lots of material there. Here's the Brahma Sutras for the highly intellectual ones. So the Bhagavad Gita is that knowledge, which is just enough in order to answer the big picture, but also to help you to live, how do I live relatively in a proper harmonious way in this world? Now I get it. The Bhagavad Gita is, it's quite a thick text. I mean, the Upanishads are, relatively, depends on which chapter you're talking about. So this means the teacher on top of the Bhagavad Gita provides extra commentaries to provide what is the meaning behind what each verse is saying. And on the basis of that, the Bhagavad Gita becomes much thicker. Yeah, but you still need that explanation. Just like if I walk into physics class, I need someone to tell me, a human being to tell me, so I can actually relate to a human being and to have this, properly explained. If I just look at it myself, then I'm just going to kind of take the whole thing to one big intellectual memorized, event. So this means we still need that, because we all are human beings and we relate to human beings. Therefore, we need a teacher for that reason. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.